welcome to Jurassic Park 3 Minute, where we'll discuss the second Jurassic Park sequel 1 minute at a time. I'm Brad.
I'm Dave.
And on this episode we'll be back on this in this minute we're back to On today's episode we're back to discuss minute 61 of Jurassic Park 3. But before we get to that, David, following on from the discussion at the start of the week with Jay about the costuming for Wheatley, we also have another article here that you've put up on Jurassic-Pedia.com of the Zach Mitchell costume guide.
Yep, that's right. The Zach Mitchell guide was actually really, really simple. I ended up finding that I had everything for it in my closet. It's just a pair of dark blue skinny jeans, a dark red / burgundy crew neck red t-shirt, a speckled gray light zip hoodie, and a pair of dirty old Converse high tops. And that's basically it. I mean, he has a backpack that we never really see much of, and he has an M65 field jacket that he wears at the beginning of the movie and then seems to be forgotten about, which honestly probably would have been more interesting than the wardrobe he wears in the movie. And then if you just want to get fancy, he also has a pair of normal Bose headphones.
That'd probably be the most expensive part of the whole costume.
Yeah, really. Well, Converse, actually, unfortunately. Yeah. Those are pricey shoes for some reason. I mean, they didn't used to be, but after Nike bought Converse, all the prices went up, and they're store brand exclusive. So Nike, you can't use like store coupons on them.
But no, it's good to see another character's costume put up there on Pedia.
Mm-hmm.
What are you working on? Some others at the moment?
Not at the moment. I'm kind of talking around with JP Motorpool and just seeing what we can kind of work out, because I'm trying not to step on their toes. They don't want to step on ours, you know. So we kind of each have something exclusive for our websites, so that we're not just copying off each other, you know.
Okay. Yep. So yeah. In the meantime, anyway, you can head over and check out the costume guide at Jurassic-Pedia.com. That and a lot of other fantastic new articles as well.
Mm-hmm.
Let's do this one at a time, shall we?
Alright, ready to go into 61.
Sure.
As we enter minute 60 of Jurassic Park 3, the pteranodon had revealed itself in all its glory, and had picked up Eric and began to fly him deeper into the canyon. As we open on minute 61, Amanda and Paul begin running back across the bridge and up the landing towards the lower observatory, and continue to run further along the catwalks deeper into the canyon. At the 8-second mark, we cut back to Eric as he's being carried by the pteranodon through the mist, its claws gripping his shoulders tightly. At the 14-second mark, its destination is revealed as it swoops in low above a nest of baby pteranodons, as they all look up, squeaking and pecking at the new food that's come towards them. Eric looks about himself for any sort of a weapon, but can only find a human skull, and picks up and throws at the tiny creatures, before running from one rocky tower to the next. At the 28-second mark, Billy and Grant come to the end of the bridge, and Billy looks up at the landing below the observatory, and looks back at Grant and clips his parasail harnessed together. With shocking realism, Grant realises what his student's about to do, and calls out his name to stop. But Billy runs up the stairs, and takes a couple of quick steps across the platform, and leaps up onto the hand railing. Grant yells and pleads with Billy to stop, but he doesn't. He turns and jumps from the railing, and falls straight down towards the canyon floor. At the 48-second mark, Billy yanks on the parachute cord, and the dinosaur parachute explodes out of his backpack and catches the wind, and he begins to travel up into the canyon. And as the minute ends, Grant looks on in shock, before starting to run down the other catwalks deeper into the canyon after Amanda and Paul. As we ended at minute 60, Eric was being carried deeper into the canyon, and everyone was sort of running to follow and catch up, and we opened with Amanda and Paul running back up the stairs and across that main landing we'd come in on earlier in the in the film, calling out Eric's name, and Amanda yells she can't see him. Which, of course, it's foggy. even though in some of these shots we're seeing the fog start to disperse.
I was going to say, I mean, she wouldn't, would she?
Yeah, you didn't even see him get picked off the bridge. You just sort of
No.
managed to see him get carried away as you sort of all come together in the middle. But we cut to Eric struggling against the clawed hands that have the pteranodons got him by the shoulders, which that's going to leave a scar. You'd imagine they haven't just got him by the InGen coat.
And this is actually kind of where we get like a really big, deep callback to those really old kind of monster movies like 1925's The Lost World, where the pteranodons would pick their victims up, usually a kind of a woman character, by the arms and carry them off, when we know that pteranodon was not, it just didn't have the stability in its flight to be able to pick something up by its claws and carry it.
Well, yeah, we had the internal monologue from Eric last minute when Jay was on, with when he sees it on the bridge and remembering that pteranodons couldn't pick up a boy, but these things being so much bigger, and then realising that, yeah, they pick him up and carry him away, obviously, but probably not just the older movies too, but even cartoons. A lot of the 80s cartoons, your Dino Riders and anything that sort of features a pteranodon or a flying animal like this, they always seem to pick up people by the shoulders and carry them. Which, when Zara gets picked up in Jurassic World, she does get picked up by the shoulders to start with, doesn't she? And then sort of...
Yeah, I think so. And I think that's kind of all she's in there. That's all they pick her up by. Then they drop her in the Mosasaur pool.
Yeah, I'm just trying to... Because it's got her again by the shoulders as it's trying to lift her out of the water too. I thought they juggled her around in the sky, but they had a leg at one stage. But
I thought they did too, yeah.
But it's also, like, I don't know, being carried up the canyon like this, I don't know how much struggling I'd do. Yes, it obviously hurt with the clawed hands in your shoulders, but they're the only things sort of stopping you from falling to imminent death, because assumably the floor of the canyon this far in isn't all water and lagoon like it is at the bottom end of the canyon. So it's going to be a hard landing if you did fall and let go. But we do see here where the pteranodon is taking Eric. It swoops down low over some rocky pillars and drops Eric at its nest. And I just love the way this set area here is built, with these sort of little rocky pillars coming up from the canyon floor below, and they got the nests for the pteranodons on top of them.
Yeah, these kind of they're like a almost a volcanic kind of spire in a way.
Yeah.
And it's really weird because they're all like really close together, like it was just a volcanic, like it was a group of volcanic openings here that the dirt wore away to, and you just left the dried plug, Yeah,
I know lava tubes go through the ground, but is that what you call the ones that come up as well? It'd be the vent, the volcanic vent itself that's sort of solidified, and then everything else is eroded away. Again, it just shows sauna. We know sauna's volcanic.
But it also kind of reminds me of like Land of the Lost, where they if I've never watched the TV show, but I've seen the Will Ferrell movie, and you got the Pteranodon nest right there in the heart of the volcano with the spires all over, and they kind of got to hop from spire to spire to get to the radio.
Yep. Well, yeah, it's gonna add to the little bit of action we see at the end of this minute as well. Just another element that Eric's got to try and overcome to get away from the babies here. But we see Eric lands amongst some bones, and we get these little rod puppets start to squeak and hop towards him. And we didn't have rod puppets earlier when we had the compies, but we do here for these baby pteranodons. And so Eric looks about himself and surprisingly finds a human skull, and without much thinking sort of just picks it up and throws at him. This skeleton has caused a lot of speculation in the fandom over the years, and if we weren't doing this minute or Jurassic Park 3 minute, it'd probably be one of the next ones up for Jurassic Mysteries. But there's a lot of theories out there. Some of the top ones have been an unfortunate InGen worker who didn't get out with the evacuation, or it's one of the lost. I think we discussed in the Lost World. Maybe it's one of the hunters that survived Operation Harvest and didn't make it off the island with InGen when they cleared out.
This skull actually has its own Pedia article. It's one of I think it's like the second article I ever wrote for the Jurassic Park Legacy Encyclopedia.
I'll include that in the show notes for this episode as well. Then I didn't even realise that had its own article.
Yeah, it's under Human Remains.
Yep.
But yeah, the skull here is really interesting just because, I mean, like you said, we don't know what it's from, and so I think it's most likely that it was just some engine worker who got too close to the edge and ended up being food.
Well, yeah, and I was sort of comparing the decomposition of it compared to what we see earlier with Ben, and this one has been pecked a lot cleaner, maybe just because there's more pteranodons here to eat off it, but it might lead to them being able to get out of the aviary, and Amanda opening the door isn't necessarily as important as what we see later, and the whole boat sequence at the front with Enrique, it explained why there's no bodies there, because these animals have shown themselves to be large enough to lift a human and get those workers off, or those guys off the boat, but that's...
Well, we see among the other around Eric that there's not just the skull here. It looks like there's a piece of a unknown bone, possibly a hip bone, because it's right next to the top of a human femur. And we also see a bunch of other other complete human skeletons here. When Eric is being dropped there, we see at least two other skeletons at the top of this little ridge.
The possibilities. I'm just imagining now a stormy night as that hurricane's getting closer, and they're all getting the order to evacuate the aviary, and there's people not getting out as those pteranodons are bursting into the cages. Oh, I love sauna. But,
I do too, man.
But Eric gets up and starts to leap from pillar to pillar here and trying to escape the babies, and we cut to Paul and Amanda continuing to run along the catwalks, and finally Billy reaches the end of the bridge, and he looks up at the landing above and seems to get an idea, and as Grant runs to catch up, Billy starts clipping up the straps from his parachute on his back, and thanks to a little bit of HD action here, we can see it's 8:15 on his watch, so if time continuity on the watches is anything to go by, it's been about 45 minutes since Eric handed Grant the Raptor Claw earlier, which is possible. I don't...
It is.
Yeah, because it's still early morning here, so...
I think it's interesting, though, because as soon as they get out of the aviary, it's sunset.
Well, I think Paul would have a little bit more trouble getting those boat motors going than what we see later, especially with 8-year-old fuel, but if Jurassic World's shown us one thing, it's the ability of fuel to degrade over the years is not something that happens on offshore islands.
Yeah.
But
it's something though that a friend at Jurassicpedia pointed out though is that all of the watches in Jurassic World are synchronized. Whenever they show whenever you see a watch on screen, it's the appropriate time for that scene.
That's interesting, because a lot of the time it's not. It's different now where you've got everything being recorded and high def and all that and digitally, but sort of back here where we're still dealing with film, it's not really something that's... There's a lot of films famously having errors like that come undone.
I doubt Johnson had script issues to worry about. I doubt he was trying to synchronize watches.
Well, even poor old James Cameron not doing Terminators.
That too. Terminator, Titanic. I think we had a lot of watch issues.
Well, just sort of issues like stand-ins, stunt actors and stuff like that. Not anticipating just how clear the image is going to be in future years.
Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely something that HD taught directors was how picked apart your movie is going to be once it hits home release, and that's just something that they didn't really think about before the advent of HD. Back when this movie came out, 720i was HD.
Oh,
now we got 4K. And 8K is on the horizon.
Yeah. Which is interesting, because I think I heard somewhere the other day, apparently, I think once we get to 8K or beyond 8K, that's only as well as the human eye can actually see, so the quality is going to be better than what we can even see it to be. Or something. That's
exactly what I've heard. I've heard the same thing, that our eyes will only register so much resolution before the resolution surpasses what our eyes can see. And I think that I heard that Jurassic World was filmed in HK. That that was the highest resolution it has. And so I'm assuming there's probably going to be an 8K resolution release somewhere down the line when that becomes a thing.
Well, even we discussed it last week with having extended versions of these films, like all 6 films extended in 4K, and that's what that, and a little bit something more behind the scenes, and that'll definitely get me to rebuy all 6 of these films again.
My computer monitor is 1080i. It's not quite 4K, and unfortunately, so there are YouTube videos that are uploaded in 4K that my screen won't let me view in 4K. The sound will be clearer when I click on that, but the camera quality doesn't change.
Yeah.
Or the video quality doesn't change, I should say. Which is unfortunate, because I guess that's going to be my next thing. I mean, 4K is only going to become the next... It's only going to move forward from there, you know?
Well, yeah, we had this discussion when we started to see what Fallen Kingdom was coming out, what media, and the whole 4K debate. And back then I had my TV, I had my Blu-ray player, I was happy. And then a couple of months ago I went and got a 55-inch 4K TV. So, of course, now I'm looking at getting some films in 4K. If you're watching films now, it's fine, but a lot of the television networks here don't have HD, and it's really noticeable watching some of the shows and that here, even the news.
You really notice that pixelation.
Yeah.
My in the family room we have a 1080i picture HD screen TV. I think it's like a 55-inch, and we probably won't update it for several years, or at least until it dies, just because, one, I mean, most of the programs aired on television aren't in 4K, and two, I mean, TVs are expensive.
Yeah.
Especially a 4K TV.
Yep.
We usually wait for the technology to become a little bit more prominent and commonplace before we start updating our hardware.
Yeah, that's why I wait for 4K players to come down a little bit in price before I get one of them, and even just some of the getting out and about video and that I film out in the wilderness and the forests and that. Even when I first got my drone, I was just happy with a 1080 high def camera on it, and no, don't need to get the one that can do 4K, because I'll never need it. Where now I'm looking at getting one with got 4K. So things change. But after that tangent, we get back to Grant, and he has a shocked look on his face as he sort of sees what Billy's about to do, and chases after him, calling his name. And we get Billy run up the stairs here towards the landing and clips another strap together as he races out across it.
And something I didn't notice about these electrical boxes that we mentioned a couple minutes ago is that it has a plastic case around it. It's got like a broken plastic case around the box that looks like it would have been protecting it from the elements.
Yeah, I'd imagine that the main thing, especially you see this mist here, like you're wanting to keep the moisture out of those electronics the best you can. And even though it's here too, like the only shelter we get is the cage itself. There isn't a roof on this landing that would keep the water out.
And something interesting else is that it looks like it has one of the like a phone cable going down the bottom of it, which maybe it was like a telephone to the observatory up above.
Well, we did have the computers on the wall up there. There'd quite possibly been some sort of phone or communications.
Yeah.
You'd think it'd be saves running up and down the stairs all the time. I know my knees would hate that.
Yeah, but I mean, I could see like if you're doing something, because right next to that, on the next pole, we see a winch that goes down to the piece of mystery equipment that we. Do we talk about that this minute?
I think we talked about that when we had the when we come out in the landing
Oh.
itself.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And it's weird because it almost looks like a radar cage in a way.
Mm.
It's like a I'm not really sure. It's attached to the winch, whatever it is, and it's got like some kind of sensory equipment in it, and it's round with almost like a torpedo shaped frame around the whatever sensory equipment is inside of it.
Yeah, and it's sort of odd being on this little winch too, because the winch would only have a couple of meters of cable, if that, on it. So it's not, you might be dropping it down a little way, but it's not going down to the water or, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Other ideas I've heard possibly about what this could be would be like a man cage, like what you'd have for inspecting the structure, but I didn't think it was big enough to hold a human man, you know?
Yeah, it doesn't look that big when we see it hanging from the landing. But I think one interesting thing, when we see Billy jump off here in a minute, it's completely gone. It's not included in the CG shot.
No, it's there. It's just very, very cloud shrouded.
Oh, okay. Well, let's get there. Billy sort of runs across the landing and jumps up onto the rail, and as sort of Grant's continue to yell his name, and I love how he just sort of thinks it's fine to jump straight up on this hand railing and thinking it's going to hold his weight. But he sort of looks back one more time as if to say I'm sorry, then jumps from the landing before Grant has a chance to grab him, and yeah, as said, so he sort of just drops like a stone down below the platform, and
it's the landing itself is interesting because in a way the netting around it has all completely been destroyed. And so it's kind of funny because it almost reminds me of the landing in, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the 90s Disney Tarzan movie, where they build that kind of tree fortress.
Oh, I haven't seen it in a long time.
Well, they build this kind of tree fortress out of the ship, and one of the areas has like an observatory landing kind of shaped like this. And so like that, it's got netting all around it. And it looks very much like this, except it's wood instead of metal.
Mm. It's sort of weird too, like there's something on the canyon wall above those stairs everyone ran back up before, so it looks like some sort of radio antenna or something.
Yeah, I can see that.
Again, like the more obvious thing is, okay, production's been told to put any industrial equipment you can find in the prop room on this canyon wall, and it doesn't have any use whatsoever to the aviary, but just trying to think of what it could be, what it could have been used for, and what its purpose is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm looking at the box again for the that we see next to the winch, and I think I could almost make out a keypad in a way.
Mm.
So I think it's a telephone. You know?
Well, we know from the kennels that they had the keypads and that there for locks, door locks and that, so whether a telephone or some sort of access code needed to start something, turn something off.
Could have been, yeah. Yeah. That's another possibility.
Because we see on the set itself, on the roof of the landing when they come out, there's those massive floodlights there as well, which would have to be wired in this control board. Go over these photos for hours. But Billy falls straight past the camera as the parasail deploys and opens up completely. Lucky for him. There's enough time there for it to come up, and sort of Grant looks down as Billy floats deeper into the canyon, and he begins to run along the same catwalk that Paul and Amanda had ran down earlier. And we also here get the start of that sort of militaristic style drum beat in the theme, where we get it a lot more at the end of the film with the main theme, or the main Jurassic theme, sort of having that military thing as well. But it's one thing I do love. Back to the Future's got that sort of military march drums in it, and I never even noticed before. But in Jurassic Park, in the bunker scene when they're getting the guns out, you have that sort of militaristic drums there as well, which